just initially, the whole process of you selecting your first side, which you'll have done now because we'll see the squad shortly. How have you found that whole experience?
You probably know, JD, from years of knowing me, that I'm one of these imaginative people that's always thinking about stories and storytelling. And what that means is I'm one of those types of dreamers. So whether I'm a 9-year-old fan in the crowd wearing a Leeds shirt, whether I'm a player, a coach, assistant coach, whatever it is, I'm always imagining and thinking, how would I do certain things? You know, Phil Daly, I've known Phil for years, he's helped me with some of my storytelling and given me platforms, and I'm always imagining, if I was Phil, what would I do? If I was Matt Adams in our marketing department, what would I do? There's a multiple amount of different avenues through which I'm always imagining. So I'm constantly imagining, what team would I pick? Who would I put in there? What are some of the out-of-the-box ideas that are going to give us an upper edge here, despite the fact we've got a fair few really influential players missing. So the experience will be new, but there is also a reality to that as well, that this isn't a dream anymore, it's a reality. And we've got to select a team that is going to compete on weekend against a team in Castleford who on paper have got a similar sort of stature to us, but actually looking at the game that they played against Wigan, I thought they were very, very good. They look well drilled. They look like they've got a lot of confidence, certainly where they finished the game. They obviously had a game plan that they executed exceptionally well, but albeit for J Field being the single difference, in my opinion, they didn't quite get the result, but they'll fancy their chances this week.
So should we expect some out-of-the-box selections on Saturday or not?
Well, that'll ultimately come down to today when I'm talking with Shaun Wane, Rich Onyx, and James Bledsoe. You've probably all seen the film Moneyball there. Just talking about James Bledsoe, he's an absolute genius in understanding the mechanics of what players perform, how they perform, and what that looks like in a graph. And I'll be drawing upon his knowledge. Shaun Wane himself is an out-of-the-box genius, so he'll have some ideas for sure. And then Rich Onyx, when it comes to discipline and being an architect within an environment, he has more contact and more fingerprints on the players than anybody else within our organisation. So, those three boys will play a part, and between us all, we'll come up with what we believe is the best team. But it has to be a good one. There's a fair bit to fix up, a little bit to fix up. Not massive issues by any means, but some will take a little bit longer than others. But we've got to get ourselves with the easy wins, the low-hanging fruit, and get ourselves in a position to compete against Cass for ourselves and obviously for our fans.
Just on possible returnees, is David Fussatua in a position to make his Challenge Cup debut?
Yeah, he's one that I've got to have a chat with today. It's interesting this day and age, James, as you know, and I'm sure I might talk about it later, but player welfare is really important, and what we want is a really fit and healthy David Fussatua. There's a lot of season left to be played. He's blown my mind in off-season with his skill and his ability. I don't think I've ever seen such a big man with the finesse that he's got. He's got the potential, and I said this at the start, to light up Super League and the Challenge Cup, broadcast on terrestrial. So I really hope so, for our sake and for the game's sake, that it might be available. But again, I'll be leaning on physios to let us know what's best for him, make sure that he's in the best frame of mind mentally and physically, because the last thing that we need against a team like Cass is for him to blow up and have an issue during the game and not be able to complete it. So again, there's a possibility, but it's probably 60-40 at the minute for.
So just on the subject of players, are you able to tell us what the reaction of the group was when they discovered that Richard stepped down?
I imagine, JD, I'm not inside their minds. There'd be a fair bit of disappointment, and for other players, there might be a sense of new opportunity. I think the dynamic of any team is that we're all reflections quite often of our coach, our desires, and some of the lads have got ideas about who and what they want to be, and that is obviously a reflection of what the coaching staff want from you and what opportunities you get. So you'd have to ask them individually, but listen, collectively, it was a really heavy day Monday. It was difficult for all of us to take. I think, me, I'm blue and amber through and through. I love Leeds, and the last thing I ever want to see is players and staff leaving, and certainly an head coach. It's always disappointing, certainly this early on in the season. And listen, I'd be first to recognise, and I've done this week, that every coach wants to leave the club in a better place than when he came, and Rich Agar did that without a doubt. We fighting relegation when he took over a side that got beat at Bradford in Challenge Cup when they were in division below. Went through COVID, as did everybody, but had all these flood issues, environmental issues at Kirkstall that needed renovating. There's so much that we needed to fix up, and he has done. And what we're left with now is not only a fantastic staffing structure within the rugby department, a great facility, which for me is world class at Kirkstall, and we love being there every day. But we finished with a Challenge Cup a couple of years ago that he won in quite narrative fashion, in the fact that him and his dad have both won them as well. So lots of really happy memories, lots of things to be positive about, and so much, the majority of which will be taken from here into the future. But there are some little nuances that we need to fix, and we'll be working hard in these next couple of days and hours to make sure we get them fixed.
So how special is the Challenge Cup, and how much of a priority is there on it from a Leeds point of view?
I think there's always a massive priority to be successful at Rhinos. Without a doubt, there's a massive expectation. As you know, the Challenge Cup for me, from a playing career point of view, was always a refiner's fire for me. I lost a heck of a lot more than what we won. I used to drive up the M1 in tears quite often. And I've got loads of daft stories, about collecting ticket money from 2010 right through to 2012 when nobody wanted to pay it because we got beat 3 times in a row. There's some unfortunate stats for us in Challenge Cup, but what it does for the game again and again is provide opportunity, provide revivals. It provides a distraction from what the league form looks like, and a new opportunity and a wonderful sort of story, historical heritage story that's been throughout the whole course of the history of our game. And if there's ever a time that we wanted a slightly different focus, it would be in the Challenge Cup this week. So we're really excited. But again, it's about us. It's about us. The external bits outside the bubble is going to have to take a second seat for now, because we need to focus on ourselves and make sure we're in the best possible frame of mind and body to compete for it.
Just lastly from me, Jonesy, and good luck at the weekend, mate. It's sort of possibly a 2-part question. How have you tried to lift the players, and what do you want that performance to look like on Saturday?
Well, you've nailed it there with the word performance. Just want it to be better than where it's been. We find ourselves, I think, as with the lowest scoring team in Super League at the minute. Which, when you look at the roster, look at our DNA as Leeds Rhinos and a club, that's never where we want to be ever. We want to play a really exciting brand of rugby. We want to play with a bit of fluidity, and I think sometimes that can be a reflection of the spirit within a team. How happy players are playing. So for me, and this is where I'm really fortunate, James. I've only ever been a relationship person. I love people. I've always been quite optimistic and enthusiastic, and I always see the greater good in everybody. And my biggest strength, I think, is empathy. So, I recognise when and where players are not quite got a smile on the face, and I believe that I can quite often remedy that as well. I know what things to put in place. The dynamic of having 30 players is that sometimes you can uncover one stone and inadvertently cover up 3 or 4. So you've got to be really careful within that. The other part of it is as well, listen, this is a new experience for me, and in many ways I find myself here through circumstance. But being a man of faith, as you know I am, providence has always proved to be in reflection a time of opportunity and real blessing that sort of manifests. And I'm really excited about having the opportunity to cheer a few people up. And that's all it's been about. That's the easy win for me, is getting everybody training with a smiling face, trying to bring the best out of them, enjoying the rugby again, and hopefully, as you put it, bringing out a performance. And I think a performance with a group that we've got can get us a win despite some of the injuries that we've got in the team.
Just as a member of the coaching staff for this season and stood on the sideline, how frustrating has it been for you watching some of the performances so far this year?
So when I was a kid, I used to spend my dinner money, my birthday money, my pocket money on tickets for Rhinos, for Leeds RL, for Dougie Lawton's Barmy Army, who know back then. And I'd come to South Stand after I'd played for Stanley. And when they got beat, if they got beat with the superstar players that we had, like Kevin Iro and Ellery Hanley and Scully, Craig Innes, Alan Tate, Graham Allroyd, I used to watch them, and if they didn't win, I'd go home and cry my eyes out. And it'd ruin me for the rest of the week. And I was again, I'm an emotional person. I had no control over it. And so, when you start to get a bit of control and influence, whether it be as a player or as an assistant coach, you feel like you can influence it. And when we understand a little bit more the context behind things, the pain isn't as grievous. That being said, mate, to answer your question, the game against Hull recently, a couple of games ago, I went home with some really bad knots in my stomach, really big knots. I'll be honest with you, I'm always transparent and honest. I felt pretty sick, really, because in the past, when we've had some difficult periods, there's always been passion there and emotion, and pick what you want from this. I've had arguments with ex-players, and we've all been on pitch track pushing a certain direction. But as James pointed out, they're a bit flat the team, and sometimes it's hard sometimes to recognise where you're going to pull some of that emotion back out. Thankfully, we've done some of that this week, and we've got around the players and we've started to find that, and that's why I'm massively optimistic about what we're going to churn out against Cass this week. So yeah, listen, it's been difficult for me because I wear a multitude of hats historically, as a fan, as an ex-player, as an assistant coach. It's a diverse mosaic of emotion, and listen, this year has not been the best.
You said before that you sort of a people person want to know when players are happy or not. Have you sort of spotted even during games that one or two players are playing unhappy?
Again, I'm not a prophet. I don't. Whilst I'm not clairvoyant, I can tell only through body language, through people's speech, and yeah, without a doubt, when people aren't playing well, and there's probably a few notable ones that you could all diagnose yourselves. Where they've been playing, they've not been fulfilling their potential, not been playing with flair, and again, that's reflected in the amount of points we've not scored this year. So we can see that. The what is the least important thing. I think the what part of it, the most important thing is the why, and that's very complex. That can be complex. That can come down to a club thing that might be absolutely nothing to do with the badge of the club or this internal environment. It can be to do with injuries that you don't know about. It can do with family at home, things that are going on within their own environment, historical issues, problems, future issues that are coming up. All kinds of anxieties lead to players not being the best version of themselves. I think what's really important is that we help them to recognise that we've got a really inclusive club here that wants to open up every single door of support and provide a wonderful network for everybody to remedy any anxiety or issues that they might have within life, so that they can turn up on a Monday morning with a great big smile on the face that's contagious to the rest of the group. And when the tide rises, all the boats in the marina lift, don't they? We've seen the sun shining outside now, and some of the smiles that have come in the last 2 days. We're starting to see those boats lift, and I hope that'll translate into a performance at the weekend.
I was going to say, if you were trying to sort of find out the why of one or two players.
Yeah, some of them obviously in sport, you've got some level of self-interest. I think what's really important within, I talk about the tribe. I've read a few books on the conduciveness of tribal power, this idea that we all need a belonging within society. I did a podcast recently and it talks about poverty, and quite often I found when I was with a Poverty Truth Commission in Leeds that a lot of it was a symptom of isolation. When people become isolated and they don't have a support network, they don't have friends, they don't have people to bounce ideas off or anxieties, it can quite quickly manifest into social anxiety, and that brings about poverty. Again, it's really important that everybody's got a role and an identity within the context of the club, whether they're playing or not, to feel valued, that they're contributing. So when they're sitting in a room, whilst they're a small constituent part, actually, when you consider the whole, we're all playing a little part, and that results in performances, in success, and an environment in which everybody's allowed to thrive. Phil interviewed me a couple of days ago, and I said, leaders create leaders. And that's exactly what we want. We want everybody to feel like they can lead, and whether that be a young kid who brings enthusiasm and excitement, or a seasoned world-class professional with some wisdom, we want everybody to contribute. Just
one last one for me. The teams you played in, a lot of what your success was based on, wasn't it? I mean, now you're leading that team. Is there any sort of moments or things follow on from your time as a player that now you're coaching them?
Yeah, he broke up a little bit there, but I think I understood the context of your question. I think that team spirit that I had from the group of players, that cohort that I played with, shines brighter now than it ever did. I think some of the stuff we're seeing around certainly Kev Sinfield and Rob Burrow, going through the most adverse situations in life that you could possibly imagine. We're seeing, whilst it's an horrendous set of adversities, the real love and positivity that emanates from that. And I've always said that. And listen, it's all right being sat here now in 2022 talking about it, but I've always said that. I could go back years to moments when I've talked about it's about the way the players treat each other. That really shone, as good as it gets. That was the whole point of the film, to articulate that actually it was about this intrinsic transcendent spirit that group of boys had. Less to do with how many passes we get in the games, how many tackles. Yeah. It was always about the group. But the problem with that, the hard thing is that it takes time to develop that, And I talked about a refiner's fire. You've got to go through the mill. You've got to go through adversity. I challenge anybody to think about a story, a worthwhile or memorable story that doesn't have a hole to climb out of at the middle of it. At the minute, we're in a bit of a hole. We've been in one this year. But I think about players like Cam Smith, Michael Leski, Harry Newman, Ash Hanley in 5 months, 5 years, talking about climbing out of those holes and the galvanising experience that had on them. And that's the only way that they can appreciate it and start to show some gratitude for what it's like to be in one and climb out of it. It's very hard to tell somebody. You can't just tell somebody, even if you can show them video evidence, they've got to experience it. And, God willing, they're experiencing it. And I'll guide them through it and tell them, listen, keep persevering, keep running, and we'll get through it.
Do you see this as an opportunity to stake a claim for the job long term, or do you think you're holding the baby, so to speak, until the next guy comes in? How do you view it? How have the club sort of explained it to you?
Yeah, I'll hold the baby until it becomes apparent whether or not I'm best person to hold it. And I've said before, this has never been about me. This isn't me fulfilling any sort of lifelong goal or ambition. I find myself here through circumstance. Again, I've always recognised the power of providence and opportunity. In many ways, I could look at this and say it's the best job in the world outside of playing, because you're steering my boyhood club, the club that I love, my second home. But at the same time, it's never been about me. And just going back to that previous answer to the question, selflessness is at the very core of that team spirit. So if and when Gary Everton finds, or the management team finds somebody who's better suited to take this club forward, mate, I'll doff their pillar. I'll make them a cup of tea. I'll pull up a chair for them and carry the bags in and make them feel real welcome. Because what I want, and I believe what all the players want, is a winning team, a successful team. So that Jamie Jones-Buchanan, who's fulfilled the boyhood dream in playing for Leeds, he's got everything that I could ever ask for in terms of love and achievement in my wife and 4 kids at home in Bramley, 90 metres away from the house. I still live 90 metres away from the house that I lived in when I signed for Leeds. Still very much the same individual. But a winning Leeds means that we've got a platform to go out in the local communities and create, again, this message of a spirit through the hub of what the Rhinos is all about, which is to change lives through sport. That's always been our mantra, our motto. But what you've got to realise is what happens on dance floor at 8 o'clock on a Friday night is the most powerful aspect to that. So that's where we've got to get back. And if somebody else can do it better than I can, mate, let's get them in as quick as possible. Otherwise, I'll do my very best to make sure I can do it.
Just one last one from me. How much does the prospect of coaching your boyhood club in the Challenge Cup excite, as well? As you say, you've had some pretty bad memories in it, but you've had some very special ones as well. It's a special competition.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know if Alex Murphy. I can't remember which way around it was, but the contrast between him being a player in the Challenge Cup and a coach, complete opposite. He lost them all in one and won them all in other, or something similar. So who knows? It could end up being something really special. This is really funny. So when we last won it a couple of years ago, we had a team photograph, as you imagine, and it's in an empty stadium. So all the lads had photographing the coaching staff under the sticks. Now, I'm not in it, And the reason why I'm not in it is because I was doing another job to please Adam Cuthbertson. Adam Cuthbertson had some peripheral in his mind all week. And I said, listen, mate, let me deal with that. Don't you worry about that. All you need to think about is playing the game as well as you can. It was the last game we played for Leeds. And whilst they're all under sticks, having the first Challenge Cup photo, and I could have had mine as an assistant coach, I'm off under a bus, grabbing out a load of things that he needed. And again, that to me is not a picture of disappointment that I've not got a photograph yet as a Challenge Cup winning assistant coach, but as a reminder that I was putting a teammate first. And that for me is what you've got to keep doing. You've got to keep doing the right thing. That was the ultimate message from Kevin Timfield, who was our cultural architect. I speak to him every day, and no matter how hard it gets, be as stoic as you can and just keep doing the right things again and again and again, and good things will happen.
Just a couple of things. Obviously, work with a lot of coaches at Leeds and in the international setup. Is there anyone in particular you're going to draw on for your own coaching career?
Yeah, do you know what? And I've been doing a level 4 coaching apprenticeship as well with some other higher level coaches throughout different sports this year, and they've been unbelievable. It was through UK sport called High Cap. And what I've been trying to do is be really open-minded to the way that coaching and education, pedagogy, whatever you want to call it, how to teach people to do a common thing together, how powerful it can be learning lessons from other sports. Sometimes we can be really guilty of being in a closed loop, confirmation bias and that cognitive dissonance in being, especially when you're in an environment for 25 years and you're reaffirmed with a load of them, eight grand final winners rings, that this is the way we do it and this is the only way to do it. Well, actually what I've learned is in the last couple of years is that a different culture, a different environment, different players bring about slightly different nuances as to how to get a job done. I can't just say that, well, this is how we did it in our day and therefore that is the way to do it, because that's just wrong. Though there are some underlying principles, and look, if I was to list some and name a few, I speak to Brian McLennan quite a bit still. He's brilliant. He loves the club. He's still interested. He sends me texts all the time about what he's thinking. What a lovely, honest, genuine guy. And I think somebody like Brian always gives me the confidence to be transparent and honest, because that's what he was, and I love him for it. Obviously, I got on really well with Brian McDermott. I've not spoken to him for a while, surprisingly. And again, Tony Smith was a genius in the way that he individualised people. Sometimes treat people a little bit differently, but to their strengths. It was very bespoke and helped me again that understanding that within all these ingredients, we all need to give them a part to play and a little belief to believe in. So yeah, they're all a part of who I am. But all the way through that, whilst Kevin Timfield wasn't a coach, he was a leader. He was the best leader I've ever been around, and he's probably number one as far as where I draw a lot of advice and habit from.
Just one other thing about team news. Corey Johnson, did he get injured in the reserves last week, and is it serious?
I don't know how serious it is. Last time I saw him, he was on crutches and he had a brace on. I don't mind telling you, I don't know how long that'll be. I don't know how precautionary it was. It certainly won't be in any sort of form to be running around this week. But as to the severity of it, I'm not massively sure. But he's got a pretty sore knee at the minute.
Just looking at Leeds this season, Jamie, I don't know, it's tempting to say when a club's only won 1 out of 6 games, that the whole season must have been a disaster so far. But that's not really quite the case, is it? I mean, if you look at the way your season unfolded, you're very unlucky not to beat Warrington in the first game, and you probably would have beaten them if you'd had 13 men on the pitch for the whole game. You actually looked like world beaters for half a game at Wakefield. If you could transplant that first half performance to every game that you played, you'd be at the top of the league in no time. And Wakefield have shown since then, that you were hardly beating a team of, a team that wasn't up to the job. They've played well since then. So, and you've also had, Hull. I was at Headingley when you played Hull, and I thought that was the best Hull performance I've seen from them for an awful long time. The amount of yardage they made after contact, for example, in that game was, I thought, absolutely outstanding. And I've not seen them do that, most of the time I've watched them. So it's not all bad, is what I'm saying. And and you've got Jack Walker coming back. I think he's gradually improving, looking really promising. So I in a long-winded way, I'm trying to say that things are not as bad as they look. And I don't know whether you'd agree with me on that.
Yeah, no, I think you've nailed it, and that's where a lot of my optimism comes from. Ultimately, it always comes down to the results, though, and people judge you on your results. The players' expectations are dictated by the results, and I think it's sometimes even worse when you're really close and you come off the field with the understanding of all the effort that you've put into a week in a game, and you lose out by the smallest of margins because of some of the smallest of circumstances. But you're absolutely right to pick up that point, and that this is I draw upon that same level of positivity that you're picking out from some of them games. I'll give you 2 examples. Fussy Tour early on in the game scores, or looks like he scored a try in a corner, just gets ruled out by a blade of grass.
It should have been given. It should have been given.
Had it have been given, then it could have been a different game. Double movement from Ash Hanley. You watch it in full speed, you've got an opinion, and you think to yourself, I didn't be an inch, his arm being an inch longer, maybe he scores, and the whole sequential nature of that game changes. There are some bits, though, Martin, where we should be able to mitigate for those discrepancies by being a lot better with some of our things like our discipline. If I was to pick one thing out that we've got no excuse for, even amidst some of the rule changes and the topical conversations we're having around the game, we need to be better with our discipline. Simple as that. We're in a new era where Leeds as a club is always going to be under scrutiny. As a group of players, we've got to be immaculate in the way that we perform at the highest level. And certainly, one of the things I want us to focus on is performing with a great level of discipline, even when we're right outside of our comfort zone, when we're at the very edge of being uncomfortable. And I think for me, that's been the big KPI this year. You look at a team like St Helens, and the crazy nature of the way this season's gone is, they lose at the weekend to the team that's not won a game yet for the first time in Toulouse. It just shows how topsy-turvy it can be. But for the vast majority of this year, St Helens are exceptional because they're comfortable with being uncomfortable. It don't matter at what level of intensity the game at, they can still operate at a world-class level. And that's where we need to get back to. And the only way to do that is to train and play with the blowtorch on you and get used to being uncomfortable. There's no shortcut around it. And but that'll take time. That takes time. It will take time. But God willing, if and when we get there, that ability to ride out unfortunate moments like the 2 tries being disallowed allow us to mitigate those things and still get the wins at the end of the week and find us in a much better league position. Because listen, there's periods within the seasons where you're going to be 6.5, 7 out of 10, but you still need to win them. You still need to be able to win them to compete for silverware, and that's where we need to get back to.
I was going to mention those 2 tries, but I'd probably never stopped talking if I had done. But I thought both should have been given, actually. But can you just tell us what the process was at the weekend? Obviously, Richard, you could tell from his post-match interviews on Friday that he was probably on the verge of standing down. He looked very unhappy, and I've had a word with him obviously since then, but. How did it arise that you were asked to take on this role, on an interim basis? I assume Gary Hetherington phoned you up, or did Richard make the contact first and say, Jamie, I'm going to stand down here. Do you want to step in, and take over? How did it happen?
If I understand it correctly, I think Richard had a lot of conversations with Gary. Obviously, as you can imagine, Richard has to look after himself, and he articulated really well that he'd not been happy in recent weeks. I don't think he felt he was getting a response from some players, and that that's probably the most difficult things. I think when you understand the problem and you can't fix it, that's one thing. When you can't diagnose a problem, that's a completely different issue altogether. And listen, he was just in a place where he wasn't happy and discussed with Gary what that might look like. And ultimately, then that responsibility passes over to Gary, doesn't it? So I'm sure Gary asked him the question as to who and what should happen in short term, medium term, and long term. And I think it's been documented. Rich might even have a play in that. But it was Gary through which the communication come to me in terms of what was happening, what they expected to happen in short term. I was driving to church on Sunday, and Gary rang me. And as you can imagine, my prayers had a particular focus that morning. Yeah, that sort of excitement and anxiety and all other emotions that exploded with that quickly turned into a great deal of opportunistic confidence. And the reason why I say that, Martin, is because whatever shortcomings I've got, and I've got a lot, inexperience as a Super League coach, certainly. But I know that all the answers are in the room. I haven't got all the answers, and somebody used the idea of an island. When you gain knowledge, the waters around the island become bigger as well. The sort of circumference, and that is representative of what you don't understand. The more I know, the more I know I don't understand. But I've always believed that the answers are in the room, whether it come through the players and their ability or the unbelievable coaching staff that we've got at our resource. And listen, I can't thank enough Shaun Wane, who's been amazing this week. He's been unbelievable, and he's a genius offensively, and he's got all that covered. Richard Unnix again is the architect, and James Bledsoe. What I need to do is use that empathy to diagnose some of the unhappy faces, and my experience as an ex-player who's been under some unbelievable coaches to throw some solutions to what could be answers to one or two of our problems.
Are you glad that the first game you're going to take charge for is going to be shown on the BBC for the whole nation to see how you do?
Well, no, because I think I'm due to be on BBC the day after with Huddersfield and Barra. So, yeah, I'm sure they'll want to comment twice on the Leeds Cast game. But look, I've been really fortunate. It's been crazy this last 6 months. Last time I was in a Zoom call with. It reminded me when JD started. I was in Betsy Coed accepting an MBE, and then I got an opportunity to go on a journey with Sky, offered a contract to work with them. And throughout the course of being beat on a Thursday night, I'm find myself in front of an audience the next day explaining myself. And so, listen, with that as well, mate, I've always been pretty thick-skinned in that the self-image and the self-esteem. And this, the self-esteem is what I think of me, and then the self-image is what I think other people think of me, and what other people think of me is none of my business. So, and I can't control it. So I don't encourage it, whether it be for good or for bad. What I do is just gather the people who are around me and ask them the question: what do we need to do? How can I help you be better, so that we can all grow inclusively?
Are you going to carry on working with Sky, by the way, or are you going to reduce your commitment? Carry on, but with a modified commitment, or how are you going to handle that?
Well, at the minute, short term, they're happy for me to carry on. If things had changed, obviously down the line, depending on what happens, I'd just say I really enjoy that side of it. I think they've all known me for showing up in a press room at some time, because whether it be, listen, you've all seen me with a camera in hand. They're interviewing players, because I've always been passionate about what you guys do. I respect and love what you guys do. I value it. I see the importance of it. I've worked in it. And that's why I think sometimes being on this side of the fence, I get a bit disgruntled when I see coaches or players not quite understand the big picture of how important the stories are, narrative is to our great game. Listen, whatever role I can play for the betterment of rugby league, I'll play it, because who I am and what I am as a 40-year-old is very much down to what rugby league's given me.
Can I just ask you one final question, Jamie, about the team?
Yeah.
It seems to me, we were talking earlier about, not everything's negative about the team, but the one element of it that seems to me, at least, and you can contradict me if I'm wrong, the one element that doesn't seem to have fired all that well is your halfback combination of Austin and Caesar. you looked at somebody like Mason Leno at the weekend at Warrington, who was sort of, you know, I thought showing far more flair as a halfback than Aidan and Blake have done so far this season for you. And I mean, obviously you can either persist with them and get them right as you want them, or you can make some changes. Now, I just wonder, A, do you agree with me that that's been a weak point so far? But B, you know, what if you do, what can you do about it?
Yeah, I do. I think it's an issue that we need to address offensively. I've said that way through. We're not scoring enough points, and they're the proverbial architects around that. They're the people that we rely on to manage us around the field. I had some, I can only describe it as revelatory conversations with both of them yesterday in a group that sort of opened my eyes to some things that I wasn't aware of. And I did so with a big smile on my face at the end of it, a smile and a headache at the same time, because, again, to diagnose an issue and understand it means that we can start to work together to fix it. There's a bit of work to do with that. But ultimately, look, in the past, my role has been defensively, some of the contact elements and the wrestle, which is why I looked at a little bit as if I was going in Michelle when he said that all got loads of meters in contact against us. A bit of a killer. But, you know, now that I've had to have more of an holistic approach to the team, I'm starting to understand some other issues around it. And look, you know what, mate? The overarching picture I'll leave you with, it's been like giving keys to Disneyland. I've got the free run of it until 6 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, and I've gone in there and noticed that, you know, some of the fuses in the fuse box are not quite firing right, and you open it up and there's a million little fuses. You know, it's not a hard problem to fix, but we're going to have to really methodically just go through and pay attention to every little constituent part. And what we'll do is we'll get all the rides firing up and get rid of all the glitches. Listen, in the meantime, we've got Tetevano's got a suspension. We've got a few injuries, a couple of lads that aren't firing quite right, and the park at 4 o'clock on Saturday. The layout's going to have to change a little bit. It's going to look slightly different, and the flow of it will be nuanced. But actually, I understand where the fuse box is and what needs changing. It's just getting everybody with the hard hats on and the head torches and working on that and getting as much done as we can between now and Saturday afternoon.
It's a long time since I've looked forward to a game quite as much, Jamie. Good luck, mate, again. And, you know, I'd love to see you get the job full time. So I hope you do.
Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Paul.